What's up, guys? It's me, Tiff, and I'm still in New York City because I attended every single day of Sam Bankman-Fried's criminal trial. And in case you haven't heard, Sam Bankman-Fried was found guilty on all 7 of his criminal charges, which included multiple counts of fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and money laundering. Sam is now facing up to 115 years in prison, but what about his co-conspirators, Caroline Ellison, Wang and Nishad Singh? The 3 of them pled guilty early on and have been cooperating with the government against Sam Bankman-Fried. In fact, Caroline, Gary, and Nishad were the government's star witnesses and were essentially the ones to convict Sam Bankman-Fried. All 3 of them claimed they committed fraud under the direction of Sam Bankman-Fried, and based on the crimes they pled guilty to, Caroline Ellison faces up to 110 years in prison, Gary Wang faces up to 50 years in prison, and Nishad Singh faces up to 75 years in prison. But will they actually do any of this prison time? Well, by most informed estimates, it looks like they'll serve 0 prison time, or if they do get any prison time, it'll likely be minimal, like in the single-digit range. In exchange for their cooperation and their testimonies against Sam Bankman-Fried, apparently the government will write 5K letters to the judge describing the value of their cooperation. Apparently, 5K letters are the most powerful sentencing reduction tool available in the federal system. Brief pause, but this coverage is made possible by support from Evertas. Evertas is the first company in the world to provide insurance solutions for crypto and mining infrastructure. And Evertas is a Lloyd's of London cover holder, which means their policies are A+ rated. Ask your broker how Evertas can help you manage your risk and protect your enterprise, or visit evertas.com. Now back to the video. My dear friend Jackie Melanik at TechCrunch actually spoke with a former SDNY AUSA prosecutor about this. She first asked what the sentencing timeline looks like for Caroline, Gary, and Nishad.
So they'll all be sentenced after, assuming there's a conviction, after the defendant, Bankman-Fried, is sentenced. Basically when their testimony is no longer needed. And that will proceed along a slower timeline. And I would imagine, as most people have speculated, they won't get jail time. They all came in the door very promptly, and it looks like they've held up their end of the bargain.
You don't think they would get any of that jail time? Is that common?
In a white-collar case where you're a first-time offender as a cooperator, it's pretty typical for the cooperating witnesses not to do actual jail time.
Oh, wow.
Now, it's not guaranteed. I've had cooperating witnesses who did get jail time, but it's the exception, not the rule. If they get up there and lie and their cooperation agreements are what's called ripped up, meaning they're voided, they still have exposure of 100 whatever years in jail. So common sense, right? If it's the options are you could get a real break at sentencing if you tell the truth. If you lie, you could face 100 whatever years in jail. You're going to most likely tell the truth.
Hopefully,
yeah, that's the goal.
So obviously the incentive system here is to make sure the cooperating witnesses are telling the truth on the stand. If they lie on the stand, their cooperation agreements could be essentially torn up and they could be exposed to a lot of jail time. And the former prosecutor, Josh Naftalis, said that in a white-collar case where you're a first-time offender, as a cooperator, it's pretty typical for the cooperating witness to not do actual jail time, and that jail time would be the exception, not the rule. It's funny because during trial, Gary Wang was actually asked what his ideal outcome would be from cooperating, and he said, ideally no jail time, and people in the crowd in court laughed. But it looks like that might actually be his reality. Bloomberg actually gave some additional examples of how powerful cooperation agreements can be for a more lenient sentence. Apparently, mob boss Sammy the Bull Gravano testified against John Gotten and confessed to 19 murders. Because he cooperated, though, he only got 5 years in prison compared to John Gotti, who got life. Additionally, Enron CFO Andrew Fastow testified against CEO Jeffrey Skilling and only got 6 years in prison, while the CEO got 24 years. In other words, if Caroline, Gary, or Nishad do end up doing any prison time, it's likely to be a very light sentence, likely in the single-digit range. According to Bloomberg, if they do get prison time, they'll likely serve at a minimum security camp holding only nonviolent offenders. However, if they do avoid jail time completely, they'll likely face other forms of punishment. The government could force the 3 to return the money they made from the fraud and pay restitution to their victims. But to me, that seems like the baseline of what should be expected from all of these people. Given that the government says that FTX lost billions of dollars, that could be a substantial burden. Apparently, Enron CFO Andrew Fastow was ordered to surrender $20 million over his role in Enron's $60 billion collapse. Additionally, Justin Paperny, a convicted white-collar criminal who previously served 18 months for fraud, said he answered telephones for minimum wage after his release to help pay a $535,000 restitution order. Apparently, the Justice Department can pursue payment for 20 years, which honestly seems kinda light. Justin Paperny said they're very aggressive in collecting. You can't sell your home or refinance it because those proceeds would go to the government. Well, Nishad Singh, for one, has already agreed to surrender many assets he acquired while working at FTX or Alameda, including a $3.7 million home he bought in Washington State's scenic San Juan Islands. He's also agreed to turn over his shares in Anthropic, which he bought for $40 million, but the investment has only gone up in value since FTX's meltdown. Obviously, regardless of what happens, Caroline, Gary, and Nishad will have quite a stain on their resumes moving forward, but it sounds like they might get out of all of this relatively unscathed. But honestly, this all feels kind of fucked up to me, considering the fact that Sam Bankman-Fried is facing up to 115 years in prison. Sam wasn't even offered a plea deal or a cooperation agreement because it seems like from day one, the government had their sights set on Sam Bankman-Fried even before they had damning evidence from Caroline, Gary, or Nishad. Caroline, Gary, and Nishad were basically just used to help deliver a bigger fish to the government, Sam Bankman-Fried. And yes, obviously Sam Bankman-Fried was the founder of both FTX and Alameda, and he was the CEO of FTX through the duration. But at the end of the day, Caroline Ellison was the CEO of Alameda Research, and in my opinion, is nearly just as culpable as Sam Bankman-Fried. In fact, throughout trial, we learned that Caroline Ellison was actually the one to pull the trigger and do a lot of the hands-on dirty work here. Caroline Ellison was actually the one who made the misleading balance sheets that were sent to lenders. She's the one who actually gave the direction to the settlement team to repay loans to third parties, which seems to be how the lion's share of FTX customer funds were actually used by Alameda. And she even admitted in her cross-examination that Sam Bankman-Fried might not actually be aware that legacy FTX customers were still sending funds to Alameda Research by 2022. However, she testified that all of the crimes she committed were under the direction of Sam Bankman-Fried. And while I'm inclined to believe her since she has incentive not to lie, otherwise her cooperation agreement could be torn up, and other witness testimonies did corroborate that Sam Bankman-Fried was the ultimate decision maker, obviously all parties involved here do have incentive to sort of point fingers and displace blame off of themselves. And it seemed very clear from the get-go that Sam Bankman-Fried was the government's main target, the biggest fish, if you will. And since they all used these signal auto-delete messages, we didn't actually see smoking gun hard evidence that Sam Bankman-Fried explicitly told Caroline to create misleading balance sheets or repay loans to third parties. It basically becomes her word against his. This is not to say that Sam Bankman-Fried is innocent, but it is to say that the other witnesses that testified did actually play quite a big role in all of this, and Caroline Ellison specifically ended up doing a lot of the hands-on dirty work here. So it just feels wrong to me that it looks like Caroline Ellison, Gary Wang, and Nishad Singh are likely going to walk out of this relatively unscathed and possibly even scot-free, while Sam Bankman-Fried is facing up to 115 years in prison. I guess this is just how the justice system works, but I'm very curious to hear your guys' thoughts. What do you guys think about all of this? I did already post a separate video breaking down Sam's potential sentencing, so if you want to watch that, it's on my channel. But let me know what topics you guys want me to cover. I've already gotten some requests, but I'm open to covering anything that feels fun or amusing or entertaining to me. And I will obviously continue following the FTX story and other crypto crime and fraud. Also, again, thank you to Evertas for making this coverage possible. To learn more about how Evertas's insurance products and services can help crypto companies protect their enterprises and manage their risk, ask your broker or visit evertas.com. Anyway, I love you all so very much, and I'll talk to you all very, very soon. Bye!